morning, everyone. Thanks for coming this morning and joining us. We appreciate it on this nice snowy winter day. That whether you're joining us online or in person, we welcome you. And to learn more about us, feel free to visit our website at ufcucc.org. And if anybody is interested, I don't know if anybody's been watching online, but if anybody's interested in getting onto our mailing list, you can drop us an email at ufcucc@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to add you to our announcements as well as welcome you in person. Thank you. Do we have any announcements today?
On Tuesday, we will be having Bible study.
Tuesday?
We're going to do it on Tuesday.
Yep.
So, yeah, reminder. We've been doing it on Wednesday, but Wednesday this week doesn't work. So we'll do it Tuesday at 7 p.m. and we'll be talking about 1 Corinthians chapters 13 and 14. So hope to see you on Tuesday.
Are we still collecting donations for the high school and the middle school?
We are still collecting donations for the student care closets. Donations have been good. I took a load to both schools this week. The two counselors that oversee those areas were both ecstatic. I mean, I filled my pickup truck between the two schools. And we've already, since then, collected a whole bunch more. You can check the tables out in the back later and see how much people have donated. Yes, personal toiletry items, home cleaning supplies, as well as bathing supplies, and jeans and hooded sweatshirts. So we'll do that through the end of the month.
And given that they're looking for some of those personal care products and that kind of stuff, can we donate cash as well so that we can buy them in bulk versus people having to donate, like buy them and donate them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can certainly accept cash donations sent to our P.O. Box, P.O. Box 182 in Buffalo. And we've actually received a couple that way so far. Sharon and I made one shopping trip, and we'll make more as donations come in.
Great.
Good, thank you.
The only other announcement, we do have confirmation this week, so if there's any youth interested in participating in a multi-church confirmation class, that is about every other Wednesday. And we have one coming up this Wednesday. We carpool. It's in conjunction with a few other churches in the cities, and so if there's anybody, particularly anybody online, that wants to have their youth be involved and participate, they're more than welcome to reach out to us, and we can handle carpooling and all of that good stuff. And then the one other thing on that is we will host the Christmas activity for that youth group here. We're probably looking at maybe a Saturday. We got to finalize the date, and we'll do likely a shopping for a needy family. And so we're kind of putting the plans together for that. So more to come on that soon too as well, if people are interested in being involved in that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We will get started. I'll ring the bell.
Yep.
And then we can pass the peas. Please stand. So we'll pass the peas with sign language.
With you, and also with you.
Thank you. Do we have any prayers from the congregation today?
I do. I have someone from my past that I found out has Hodgkin's lymphoma this week. Someone back from high school that I used to know. Caught me out a little bit off guard. I was surprised by that. And so I'd like to ask for prayers for him and his family.
I'd like to ask for continued prayers for my brother as he is working towards better mental health. It takes a long time. And just for his wife as well, and their children as they get used to what the new norm is right now. All right. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for being here with us on this first snowfall of the year in the cold and brisk winds. Thanks for reminding us that we have a warm place, that we can be comfortable, communicate, and be with others, and think about all the ways that you have been a warmth in our lives. Please hold Shelley's friend, high school classmate in your prayers as he and his family work on healing. And please keep my brother and their family in your prayers as well. Things are, our minds are harder to see than our bodies, but yet they're just as important to our health. And today, as we move into our time of discussion, a focused prayer. God, our rock, you hear the cries of your people and answer the prayers of the faithful. Grant us the boldness of Hannah, that we may persist in prayer, confident in your steadfast love. Amen. So today, I wanted our prayer, or our scripture reading is from 1 Samuel, chapter 1, 4 through 12, verses 4 through 12. And it's about Hannah and her prayers to God for a son. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he gave portions to his wife Penelope and all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a second portion, because he loved her. Though the Lord had closed her womb, her rival used to provoke her severely, to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? After they had eaten and drank at Shiloh, Hannah rose and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. She made this vow, O God of hosts, if only you would look on the misery of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a male child, then I will set him before you as a Nazirite until the day of his death. He shall drink neither wine nor intoxications, and no razor shall touch his head. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying silently. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. So Eli said to her, "How long will you make a drunken spectacle of yourself? Put away your wine." But Hannah answered, "No, my Lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have drank neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation all this time." Then Eli answered, "Go in peace. The God of Israel grant the petition you have made to him." And she said, "Let your servant find favor in your sight." Then the woman went to her quarters, ate and drank with her husband, and her countenance was sad no longer. They rose early in the morning and worshiped before the Lord. Then they went back to their house at Ramah, and Elkanah knew his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. In due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I have asked him of the Lord." So with that passage, kind of what I wanted to, was wondering is, what are kind of some of the first thoughts that come to mind when you hear those, hear that, especially the beginning? Is anything?
I guess what I thought about when you were reading it was, you don't always get what you want. There's that struggle of, maybe you don't always get what you want when you think you need it. That's kind of one of the big themes I took from it.
And I suppose I don't know, the thing that kind of jumped out at me was two wives bickering back and forth. The same husband.
Yep.
I was thinking of Sister Wives, if anybody has seen that show. And it kind of, it's like, oh, that's kind of an interesting picture. And anyway, the lady that wrote Cheryl Lindsay wrote the reflection. She said, "This passage begins with the dynamics of a family immersed in drama. Multiple wives, infertility, and ensuing rivalry might be rejected by producers of a reality TV show as being too over the top to be credible." Well, that does, kind of comes into play there.
Well, the other thing along that lines is it shows that bullying, if you will, is not restricted to our teens. That it happens at any age.
Yes.
People can be ruthless without even thinking about it.
We may not even be thinking about what we're saying, although I think it was pretty evident in this passage that the other wife was. I would say that kind of, I don't know that it throws me for a loop. I think that through the Bible we hear a lot about multiple wives, and but it was certainly a different perspective. It's a norm we don't see today. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting, though, because that passage doesn't explain whether the other wives had borne sons or not.
There was one little section that
Did
it did say, it was something about giving a portion of the food to to his wife Penelope and all her sons and daughters.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And as I was reading more about this, one of the things that kind of made me think a lot this week was near the end of this, there's a couple of quotes that I think is so true for our lives. Seeking what is true is not seeking what is desirable, by Albert Cummins. He said that. And then Annie Rice said, very few beings really seek knowledge in this world. Mortal or immortal, few really ask. On the contrary, they try to wring from the unknown the answers they have already shaped in their own minds, justifications, confirmations, forms of conciliation without which they can't go on. To really ask is to open the door to the whirlwind. The answer may alienate the question and the questioner. Have there been times when you've kind of thought about like I was thinking about what were like some of the assumptions that Eli and Elkanah made in our passage?
Well, Eli made the assumption that she was drunk, had too much wine or something, and she's
Yep.
praying.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the comments in there, I think from Alkaline, was like, aren't I good enough versus the sons or whatever? So sort of this assumption of it's either or.
Yes.
It can't be both. She can't love him and sons, or, she can't be content with him and sons,
Yes. Like it had to be all about him. Mhm. That was one of the things that was brought up in the reflection a little bit. Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Elkanah asked Hannah. He makes Hannah's story all about him when it's about her and her relationships that include him but are not exclusive to her wife, to her spouse. Whether it is that is causing the infertility for them that has happened. So it was him just turning it, like the first questions he asked were, why is your heart sad? That's like a really good question. It doesn't have an assumption of an answer.
And for him, it's not as big a deal. He has another wife, he has sons with the other wife, so he has sons. And so it's kind of, again, it's turning back on him. Well, I already got sons, so what's the big deal?
Well, and Ash, I think you said a very important concept of that, and true in this story, it's also true, in regards to someone else is troubled or in need, and yet our response a lot of times is, well, I've been there and I got through that, or, we want to turn somebody else's story into our story. Hannah's husband knows that she's sad, so but yet he turns it, like you said, into his story about, well, I'm good enough, why do you need that? That's not unlike some of the things we see in our racial injustices these days, where particularly those of us that are white will hear the story of a person of color, and we want to go out there and feel good ourselves about helping them in some way. And it's not unlike mission work, where we send people to different areas as missionaries, supposedly to help people, but a lot of times it becomes, or too often anyway, it becomes about that person that's going and them feeling good. It's turning that story, rather than being concentrated on the original person's need, we want to turn it into something that makes us feel good as well.
Are there times that you can think back that maybe you've made assumptions?
Oh, certainly. I know, I took some kids to Minneapolis for a mission week, and as we're arriving, there's this guy outside the building, and it's not in the best part of the city, and I know that, and I kind of assumed he was maybe a homeless person and might be trouble, and wasn't real receptive to wanting to talk to him, and only to find out later, yes, this man had been homeless at some point in his life, but he was actually working with the program that we were a part of that week. And, but I just kind of made that assumption of, not sure about this guy hanging around, looks scruffy, looks, he had that stereotypical look about him. So I just assumed it was not good. I assumed he wasn't part of the whole program that we were there to participate in.
Does that guy have a different color skin than you?
No.
But that's often
He just had the look.
but that's often an issue, Jeff.
That is often an issue.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, yeah, yeah. But that wasn't the case here. And yeah. And I'll have to admit, if the skin color had been different, I probably would have been even more skeptical or, nervous about it.
I think our assumptions get in the way so much of getting to know people, because we've been taught to make assumptions from the very beginning. So one of the things that this kind of brought up for me also was kind of what questions do we have for God? So if we think about this, I was doing I found something that I thought was very interesting. It was done, it was letters to God from from third graders. And just to kind of get our brains thinking a little bit about what kind of questions we might have for God. These were some questions from the third graders. Dear God, I bet it is very hard for you to love all of everybody in the whole world. There are only 4 in our family, and I can never do it. So if we really think about what that means. Dear God, thank you for the baby brother, but I prayed for a puppy. And then, dear God, did you mean for the giraffe to look like that, or was that an accident? So, kind of the last one. Dear God, how come you didn't invent any new animals lately? We still have just all the old ones. Okay. So if you could think of questions that you wanted to ask God, what would they be?
So I've been reading this book as part of a Bible study group that I'm part of on Thursday mornings, but and for me, I've always avoided that whole thing, but it's the chapter we read this week is talking about the all of the wars and the atrocities in the Old Testament. And how do you reconcile that with a loving God? Because if you read in the Old Testament, it says they were told to annihilate people, basically. And I have a really hard time reconciling that with a loving God. So that's what I really want to know. How does that fit?
Is that the, yeah.
Why do you, I mean, you're putting an emphasis on Hebrew scripture, but can't that be said of all the wars that are going on now and all of the loss of human life and destruction to the environment and everything else? I mean, the same question applies, does it not?
Yes. Yes. I guess the reason I emphasize it in the Old Testament is in the Old Testament, it seems like it's implied that it was done at the direction of God. And maybe some people use that justification today. So maybe it is the same thing.
I think there are a lot of wars that are exactly the same thing. The Crusades were, even a lot of the Islamic fundamental groups are doing it today.
The early Europeans that came to the United States, that came to the Americas, they felt justified in trying to annihilate the natives that were here.
They weren't people.
And they were working at the direction of the church. You know, the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church that was predominant at that time told them, you know, you are directed to go out and conquer these heathens and either convert them or kill them, basically.
But I don't even think you have to go back that far.
No.
I mean, there are many thousands of refugees today in Belarus on the border with Poland, and they're suffering miserably. You know, so Belarus and Russia, you know, who really pulls the strings there, can make a political statement. And, you know, human life just isn't important, it seems like, even today oftentimes.
Well, we see that at our southern border with Mexico, where these people have fled persecution from other countries in Central and Southern America. And yet we just kind of, a lot of people want to turn their backs on them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not picking on Sharon for raising the old, you know, Hebrew scripture point, but I just think the question is as relevant today as ever. I mean, we talked a few weeks ago about there's enough, you know, nuclear weapons in the world to kill everybody multiple times over. But I don't hear people clamoring to do away with nuclear weapons, you know, and it's just kind of a quiet, you know, subject nowadays. We don't really talk about other things, but we're not talking about that.
Right.
And we have, maybe that's what's changed, is human beings now have the capacity to play God and basically destroy the planet that we know, you know, but still, we're not, you know, I can't say that we're not. I mean, if you look at the climate change talks that just took place in Scotland, and those young people that were there, and, you know, really saying, you're not doing enough, my generation, you know, but for the most part, that's kind of a lone voice crying in the wilderness.
That's maybe a question that I would ask is kind of to that end. uh, our free will is what gets us where we are, I think, with climate change and the destruction that we're doing on this earth. It's our will, it's our free will and our free choice to do whatever we want. And so I think my question might be to God of, is there a point where you're gonna step in, and although we have this free will, you, like, because I think of it as a parent. You know what, you give your children the freedom to, you know, take those first steps and, you know, climb on the couch, whatever it is, but you're watching them, you got your eye on them, you know, and then eventually you put the fence up so they can't get onto the couch or they can't do whatever the, you know, thing you're teaching them, you know. And so I just wonder, you know, is there a point where God will step in and do something about it because we've taken this level of free will too far? I don't know. Or will he let us go to the point that we'll destroy ourselves?
I'm, and Sharon and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, and I'm not a particular believer in free will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as a parent of adult children, I have a lot less ability to influence my children today as I did when they were, you know, little kids. You know, but still you try.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, they're going to end up making their own decisions, and my influence, as little as it may be, is going to help, you know, going to be disregarded maybe, or not have any major effect probably. I don't know. I just, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I think of it in the same way, because as a parent, that's the way I think about it. That's the way I think often of that relationship with God. I think God is trying to influence me and trying to guide me on a path of where I need to be. I feel I have choices, you know, that get me there, or, you know, that I can make, but I feel, you know, God's role is guiding me and influencing me like a parent does with a child. And you're right, there comes a point where that influence may not garner the results I had hoped as a parent. And so if I think of, like, you know, the falling off the couch or a jumping in a pool, in those moments where I know my influence isn't going to be enough, I want to put that fence up. I want to put the fence up around that pool and not let them in. So it's just, I don't know, it's just such an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it feels like we're already swimming in the deep end.
Right? I feel like we've already jumped into the pool and we're sunk to the bottom.
Yeah. You know.
Yep.
So.
But is that an indication of where our society has gone in relationship to God? You know, we've, especially lately, it seems like we have, everybody knows that the church attendance and church membership is declining dramatically across the board. And yet our society suffers from a number of these issues, if you will. Is that part of the reason why? Because our society as a whole is forgetting about God.
I don't know if it's because we're forgetting about God. I think it's more that we've got whatever view we have of God, and that's the right one. And so we fight among ourselves. about what that is.
Mhm.
You know, using the analogy of the child and the parent, and I don't know if I can remember exactly how it goes, but, you know, it's said that when your child is born, up until at least they become a teen, mom and dad are the smartest people on earth. Then they become a teenager, and mom and dad don't know anything. Then as they become young adults, and maybe have children of their own, oh, you know what, maybe mom and dad did know some things, and some of their stuff was pretty, and then as mom and dad become senior citizens, they don't know nothing anymore. Are we at that point where we're teenagers as a society?
Much better than being a senior citizen, that's for sure.
Well, that's a whole other subject,
I was
Jeff.
going there, yeah.
But, you know, are we at a point where, like those teenagers, God, our parent, I got this, I know what I'm doing, I don't need you. And we think we can do it all anyway?
And I think people are on maybe that cycle in, you know, in different waves, you know?
Mhm.
There are people that their teenage years may hit at different times than others.
Ah.
And there's some that will maybe never get to the teenage years, or they had a different teenage year, you know, like there's some people
Mhm.
that church and God and their faith are all are and always will be part of, you know, who they are and all of that kind of stuff. But I think you kind of can take the ride differently, maybe.
Yeah, different seasons in your life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it takes from us to use that parent-child analogy to the human and the divine. All I can say from a faith perspective is, while I may not be able to influence my children that much, there's nothing that my child can do that's going to make me stop loving them, period.
Mhm.
And I think that's true with God as well. I mean, I don't think there's anything that me personally or us as part of the human race can do to have God stop loving us, you know, and that's just a bedrock, you know, faith statement that for me. You know, and even if that means that we end up destroying our planet or blowing each other up or killing each other in crazy wars, I mean, I don't think God's going to stop loving us. So, whether the ending is a happy ending or not a happy ending, it's a happy ending because God loves us.
So that's kind of what I had for today, and just kind of think about what those questions you might have for God, even throughout your week. Like, I don't know, there's so many things that I think we could have questions and just want answers to. But the mystery is what it is.
We keep coming back to that in this Bible study, and I mean, there are times when we end up just saying, it's a mystery. We can't figure it out. It's a mystery.
Yes. That's,
Well, and if we could find, quote unquote, all the answers, I'm not sure we'd want to,
Right.
from a lot of angles.
Yeah. There's times that if I didn't, like the one quote about asking questions in a way that actually affirms your own assumptions already, if I really opened that question up and opened it to the storm, would I really want the answer?
And I think something Shelley said early on in our discussion about the answers don't necessarily come at the time or with the answer that we really want, like you're saying, Ash. Maybe we gotta be afraid of asking some questions for fear of what the answer might really be. Because it's not what we think we want or need.
Or perhaps even to be a little more esoteric, I mean, there are some questions that the point of the question isn't to find an answer, it's to have a conversation and just to discuss something from many different points of view. Not that we're ever going to come to agreement on an answer, but it's just a way to open us up and to share and to talk about perspectives. I mean, it's not a matter of right and wrong, it's a matter of, dialogue within the community and recognizing that there can be a lot of different perspectives towards one question.
You say at work all the time, what's the question behind the question?
Yeah.
And that's maybe what it is. We ask the question to start the conversation, to really have a conversation about what the question behind the question behind the question behind the question probably is. Yeah.
Well, and that's really been one of the founding principles of this faith community is we say often, we don't have all the answers. We've probably got more questions than we have answers. But let's talk about it. And I think that helps all of us grow in our faith as we do that.
I always think of the, I think the United, the UCC tagline, don't put a period where God put a comma.
Yep.
And I don't know, I've always thought that there was much more, or wanted to believe anyway, that there's much more than just the ending. That dialogue gets us so much further than a statement. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.